Is your PC embarrassingly slow? Is it making you rage out at the thought of using it or waiting for your favorite game to load? All PC gamers have felt like this at some point, and I am going to do my best to show you some of the top tips to speed your computer up. Tip number 1. Updates and drivers. Now I know this isn't an exciting topic, and I know a lot of people are instantly going to turn off at the mention of this. It's like, oh, it'll be alright, it doesn't need updating. It is way more important than what you realise it is. Intel, nvidia and AMD have all released drivers that have increased performance of their already released products before. Drivers and updates are dead important. Make sure your graphics driver's up to date, make sure Windows is up to date, make sure any chipset drivers or anything like that is completely up to date. And if it's not too scary, make sure your BIOS is up to date. And this can actually affect performance. This can give you real numbers, real FPS numbers in your games and increase stability and the responsiveness of your system. It's well worth doing. I always make sure my stuff's up to date, and you should too. Part number 2, uninstall your crap. So many systems, so many systems, especially systems that I get here, have got so much useless crap on them that people just do not need. I've mentioned before about antivirus and stuff like that. Norton and McAfee, however you pronounce it, are two of the worst ones. If you've got anything like that on your system, just uninstall it off the bat. Do not use McAfee or Norton for your antivirus solution. It takes up so much resources, it's just not worth it. Apart from that, any bloatware that came with your system, if you can, uninstall it. Most PCs, most laptops, most tech in general has some kind of bloatware or crap on it that you do not need and you can just get rid of. Files in general that you don't need, delete them. It is taking up valuable storage space and it's potentially slowing down your system. Temporary internet folders, pictures, videos, games, especially if your SSD or hard drive is getting to the edges of its capacity, you can actually see them drives slow down. This is more so in hard drives than in SSDs, but it can still happen. So anything that you do not need, delete it, uninstall it, get rid of it, make some room, and make sure that these horrible bloatware programs aren't just destroying your performance. Part number 3, startup applications. This is a simple one that most people know about and most people will have already figured out and fiddled with and all the rest of it. But for those that don't, it's a very simple process and I will talk you through it. There'll be a little video overlay here so that you can see. So open Task Manager, click More Details if you've got the basic little window that comes up. Click on Startup Apps and disable any startup applications that you do not want to start once your PC turns on. It does save so much boot time. 2.5 days if you're still booting off a hard drive. Part 4, BIOS settings. Now, this is an interesting one. There are a ridiculous amount of settings in the BIOS that you can tinker with to try and up your performance. I'm not really going to get into the details of overclocking, even though I do have a section on that later on. But the basic BIOS settings that you should absolutely change to try and increase your performance are resizable bar, XMP, DOCP or XPO, which is your memory overclocking, and 4G decoding. I always enable these settings in BIOS if they can be. And that is purely because, in my experience, it has shown quite good performance gains, especially memory overclocking. You can see real world increases in FPS in games just by turning on your memory overclocking. And let's be honest, you've paid for the speed of memory that you've bought, so you may as well use the performance that you're going to get out of it. Part 5, Windows settings. The first settings that I change when it comes to Windows to try and edge every little bit of performance out of it just to make it a little bit more responsive is in the advanced system settings. To adjust the advanced system settings, go to Start, type in Advanced, click Advanced System Settings, click Settings under Performance, uncheck everything by clicking Adjust for Best Performance, then click Smooth Edges of Screen Fonts and Show Thumbnails instead of icons. Apply this and you shouldn't see much difference in the look of Windows 11, but it'll be a little bit easier for your system to run, hopefully saving you a little bit of performance. Once you've sorted your advanced system settings and you've got everything still looking good, but performing a little bit better, the next thing you want to look at is power plan. Now, I don't actually know how much of a difference this will make. I will always put my PC in the highest power profile that will allow. There's a few little things that I will do just to make Windows a little bit easier to deal with. Windows isn't a perfect operating system by any degree, and potentially is going to save you or net you a little bit of performance. Disable notifications. I don't like the notifications that slide on the screen, and I disable absolutely everything I can to do with notifications in the Windows settings, but disable whatever notifications you can, especially if, like me, you find them annoying. It's going to save your processor having to deal with them notifications. It's going to be a service that is started that is going to deliver notifications, so just stop them so that you don't have to do that. Part 6, overclocking. Don't fear, this isn't anything mental. I'm not going to go into detail on overclocking because, to be honest, I myself don't really delve that deep into overclocking. I've done it on this processor with a lot of help from a friend. I would not have been able to do that at all without him. But there are simple overclocks that you can do to increase your performance without having to worry or be scared that you're going to damage something. One we've already done, and that's your memory overclocking. That is an overclock, and by using that, you increase the performance of your RAM and your CPU. The next one, if your BIOS allows it and it has any kind of unlocking limits, that alone will increase performance. It will allow your motherboard to allow your CPU to draw more watts and reach a higher boost clock. Beware, more power means more heat, so if you don't have an adequate cooling solution, this section on the CPU overclocking isn't really for you. Graphics card overclocking isn't as scary as you think. If you use something like MSI Afterburner, it is relatively risk-free, it is dead easy to apply the overclocks, and you just incrementally up the boost clocks until you get to a point where you start seeing artifacts or some kind of weird behavior or even crashing. Bring it back a little bit until you know it's not doing that and you know it's stable. I like to get to the cusp and then back off a little, give myself a little bit of headroom just in case the graphic card spikes itself, and then you do the same thing with the memory clock. So you do your core boost clock and then you do your memory clock, and just keep upping them, keep running the test over and over again, and once you start seeing weird artifacts or any kind of weird behavior, dial it back a little bit. You've now gained more performance and you've got a stable system, which is fantastic. And part 7, upgrades. I know people are going to groan when they see this one. Oh, upgrade, I've got to spend money. The only way I can make my computer faster is by spending money. Sometimes, yes. It is that simple. All computer components age, and everything to do with technology and running programs gets more and more complicated every year. So yeah, sometimes you may need to spend some money to have that effective performance jump that you actually want. With some things, this can be very, very cheap and it doesn't have to cost the world. If, for example, you're still booting from a hard drive, buy an SSD. Like a 0.5 terabyte SSD is what, 35, 40 quid at the minute, maybe even cheaper than that. Terabyte one, 70, 80 pounds. If you can save up a little bit of money, you get to the point where you've got enough for a 1 terabyte SSD and you're still on a hard drive, the performance difference is nuts. And it doesn't matter what gen SSD it is. Even going from a hard drive to a SATA SSD is going to see such a massive jump in responsiveness of your system. And there's other really cheap upgrades that you can do. If you're on a DDR4 platform and you've got 2133 mega transfers per second RAM, go out and spend 50 quid, get a 3200 mega transfers per second RAM kit. Put that in. You are going to see measurable performance from that RAM speed. From 2133 to 3200, you're going to see a difference. There's no doubt about it. And it's cost you 50 quid. Obviously, if you're not comfortable working in a PC and stuff like that, that can be different, but installing RAM is very simple, it's very cost effective, and can net you some performance. And on that, if you're only running 1 stick of RAM, going out and just buying a second stick and putting that in, so that your system's running in dual channel, that can net you some massive performance gains. Obviously, after these two, things get a little bit more expensive. Then you're looking at cooling solutions, can increase performance. If you've got a CPU that's hitting 85 and it's down clocking and you get a better cooling solution, it's running at 50, it will naturally boost higher because it's got that thermal headroom to do it. As long as it's not power limited, it will keep jumping up a little bit. Decent cooler. I mean, how much is the Peerless Assassin now? £30? £40? And that thing's a beast. For such a small little cooler, that thing does really well. As long as you haven't got a flagship CPU that's going to draw 300 watts and try and melt down your entire system, getting yourself a £40, £50 cooler instead of using the stock one may actually be great. You'll get a quieter system, a cooler system, and more performance. Seems like a no-brainer to me. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, maybe consider watching one of these two that's going to pop up here. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I shall see you on the next one.